Welcome again to the WAC World Podcast. I'm Roman Loyola. On the East Coast, joining us remotely is Mike Simon. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Roman, Leif, and Dan. How are you all? I feel like we just did this.
Yes. It's
no, that's not true
again.
at all.
I'm joined by Leif Johnson on my left.
Hello.
And the most important man in the room, Dan Masuoka.
Still here.
Dan Masuoka is still here. He's the most important man in the room because he's checking our Twitter and YouTube feeds.
And that's how I found out that we did not have any sound the first time we tried this.
Yeah. Now we have sound. See, that's how important he is.
Exactly.
Because if he wasn't here,
we were literally
would
talking to
still
nobody.
Be talking, and you guys wouldn't hear us at all, and we wouldn't have a clue as to what was going on.
But it was a good conversation.
So.
And then I would end up, posting the video and be like, oh, there's no sound.
So we have sound this time, and sound's important, and sound is actually the latest meme on the internet. So that's the original
we didn't
introduction.
have that transition the first time around.
Yes, our first time around when we originally started this podcast, we talked about the whole Yanni Laurel phenomenon that's on the internet right now, and so be interested to know if people have run into this, and if you hear either Yanni or Laurel. So just to give a little bit of background, there's an audio file that you can find on the internet. It's a poorly recorded audio file, and it's sort of like the whole blue, black, white, gold dress picture thing that happened a couple of years ago. Some people hear the words Yanni. Some people hear the words Laurel. Now, when I ran into this, I actually read an article about it, and before I read the article, I listened to the sound file, and I heard the word Yanni. And then after I read the article, I heard the word Laurel, and I can only hear the word Laurel. And it was all on this laptop. So for me, it's probably like a subconscious thing now. I don't know. But depending on what audio device you listen to, sometimes you might hear a different word. But
I heard Laurel on my phone clearly, repeatedly.
Yeah.
And then I tried this morning, I came across something, and I did it on my MacBook, and it was clearly Yanni. And then I went back to my phone, and it was, again, clearly Laurel. So clearly it has something to do with your speakers and whatever, bass treble, whatever's coming out of your speaker. I didn't try with headphones. I should give that a shot.
Yeah.
Does it matter that Mike's video is not synced up with his audio?
Oh, come on now. We're not doing this again, Leif.
It's only off by like a second and a half.
It is true, yes.
Yeah.
It's like watching a poorly dubbed movie.
I think we live with it. Are you getting that comment, Leif, on Twitter?
Yes.
Maybe we can do the same thing.
Right?
And then so Mike won't feel so alone.
Poor Mike.
I'll just interrupt people all day long.
But Leif, you kind of heard a munging of the words. Is that correct?
When I first woke up, listened to it on my iPhone, and I heard Yanni while I was sitting in bed, like, what the heck is this? And then I got to work, put on my AirPods on my MacBook, and I initially, for like 1 second, heard Yanni, but then I heard it like changing. My voice hurt, my ears heard it transition, so it was like Laurel, yeah. And then I could only hear Laurel after that. But it was interesting the way it changed. And Yanni, if you haven't ever heard either one of them, Yanni sounds very computerized, whereas Laurel actually sounds like a person speaking in a kind of fairly baritone voice. So yeah, once you hear Laurel, to me, you can't ever hear Yanni again. So it's like a conversion. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And Dan, you haven't participated in this yet, have you?
No, not at all.
But he should know about it right now.
And when you were saying, I was like, Yanni is in like the musician Yanni, or I was like, and Laurel is in like Laurel and Hardy. I was like, what's going on?
Exactly.
But now that
Yanni actually, he had a good tweet last night where he said like I always hear Yanni or something like that.
I thought it was funny.
But yeah, in addition to Yanni and Laurel, today we're going to be talking about the anniversary of the Apple Store. We're going to talk about what we'd like to see in iOS 12 with the Worldwide Developers Conference coming up soon. But the first topic we're going to talk about is cloud storage. In particular, we're talking about Google One and iCloud. Yesterday, Google One was announced by Google. So last week they had their I/O developers conference, and then, just when you thought it was done, they came out with a new announcement yesterday about Google One, and it's Google One is this new. Is it fair to say it's new? It's not really new, right, Mike? It's more like it's their pay tiered.
Yeah, it's kind of like a rebranding.
Yeah, it's like a rebranding of their storage. And, there are a lot of Apple users that use Google services and Google One, and a lot of people who use iCloud, or a lot of people who use Google One because they don't want to use iCloud, so to speak.
Google Drive as it's known right now.
Yeah. So,
Google One is basically the paid tier of Google Drive. If you have a free 15 gig Google Drive account, you're still going to have a free Google Drive account. If you pay, it's Google One. It's a little confusing.
Mm-hmm. But so Mike wrote a story for us yesterday, kind of sort of comparing the two, and talking about why. So Mike, why Google One over iCloud? Why should I be concerned about what Google's doing with their cloud storage?
If you compare apples to apples, the pricing is similar. It's 2 gigs for 2 terabytes for $10 and $10 a month, and I think it's 200 gigabytes for $3 a month.
Yeah,
and Apple offers 99 cents for 50 gigabytes, right? And
that's right. Google does not. Google has 100 gigs for $2 or something. I forget what it is, but they're pretty much identical.
And that's per month.
That's what?
Per month?
Per month, yeah. Google has a yearly price. Apple, I don't think does, but I'm not 100% sure. They might have changed that recently. So, like I said, it's the same thing. You got access to a drive. There's an app. You can go on the web and share files and stuff. It's just that, Google with Drive, and now even more so with One, they're kind of doubling down on its concept of everywhere. You can access your stuff everywhere, and it's convenient. No matter what device you're using, no matter what you're doing at the time, your Google Drive is there. And that's why I subscribe to both. I subscribe to Google Drive for that reason. Mm-hmm. I subscribe to Apple because I have to, because I don't have enough damn space to fill up my backup. And that's the difference. And I don't think Apple is offering its users a compelling reason to pay for it, other than I got a pop-up saying I don't have enough room to back up my devices anymore because they only give me 5 gigs. And I don't think it would be all that difficult to do it. Mm-hmm. 2 things I want is I want to be able to back up my Mac. If I have 2 terabytes of cloud storage, I want to be able to back up my Mac like I do my iPad. Mm-hmm. Throw 200 gigs up there. I don't care. Mm-hmm. But make it easy. I have Time Machine and I have all that set up. And I understand that, cloud backups are different than physical backups, fine. But give me the option to store my Mac in a cloud. So if I get a new MacBook or something happens, like my MacBook Pro just died on me like two months ago. And so when I get a new one, I got to use my Time Machine backup. But why can't I just, like an iPhone, plug it in, grab my iCloud account, and, wait 2 hours or whatever it takes for it to restore. So there's that, and I also want an Android app, and I know people are gonna yell at me for this, and it's not Apple and blah blah. But listen, if you're selling a cloud storage, why should it depend on what device you're using? It shouldn't matter. It should be agnostic.
Exactly. And this is the way you win more people over, by having a good service. Yeah. Google has its stuff on iPhone, and it's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
And it's not like people are gonna say, "Oh, I'm gonna go buy an Android phone now because that's crazy." Mm-hmm. It's offering your users the convenience of going on any platform, whether it's Windows or Mac or iOS or Android, and being able to access your stuff.
You have it wherever you are, no matter what you're on. As long as the internet is around.
The Apple does offer a Windows app that accesses
Yes, they do.
iCloud.
They always have. Yeah.
So it's
even back with iDisk that you can map your drive to Windows. So they have always had that. Yeah.
So so there is this sort of it's how Apple wants to position iCloud. Is it just a standalone service that anybody can use? Is it a service that's mostly for their kind of ecosphere?
And if that's what they're positioning it as, if they're saying this is a benefit to our users, well, then why? Like, why are you locking them further into your ecosystem? They're already joined. They're already in. Give them the freedom to at least have their files wherever they need them to be, rather than, getting Google Drive or Dropbox. They're basically forcing their own users to spend money or at least sign up for a competing service because they don't offer the flexibility and convenience of those services.
Now, here's something, you were talking about, Apple mainly considering it as a backup service, whereas Google, even though they got the Android push and everything, I still think of them mainly as a services company. And
absolutely.
And but maybe that could be a perk of buying an actual Mac. Is like, look, you got a Mac, we know you need all this extra iCloud storage, so boom, here's 200 gigabytes or something like that. So.
Or, that's not a bad idea. Or at least make it a perk of buying an iCloud storage plan. Say if you spend $3 a month on 200 gigs, you also get Mac backups. And if you don't have enough, here's the 2 terabytes. 2 terabytes, I'm pretty sure everyone would be able to back up their Mac with.
Yes.
That's a ton of space.
I only have 250 gigs on my MacBook.
Yeah, me too. I have the same. Yeah. So I don't, listen, they got Apple Music and iCloud. Their services are reliable and fast, and they're good. But iCloud is just... it's just not quite where I need it to be. In fact, I was having I wrote about this yesterday. My dad called me up like a month ago, and it's like, how come I need to pay for iCloud? Because he just got an iPhone 10, and he has an iPad, and he has an old iPhone now, so he has too many devices. And I said, that's just how it is. You get 5 gigs, and once you run out of those 5 gigs, either you got to choose what you're going to back up, or you got to pay $1 or $2 a month.
Here's something, give you an idea of the problem of of Apple's services and stuff. So yesterday, our EIC, John Phillips, was, he had his iPhone, which he normally doesn't carry, but he downloaded his Gmail app to it. So somebody within the company sent him an Excel sheet through Numbers. I said an Excel sheet, a spreadsheet through, there's your branding right there. And so he asked me how to open it and stuff. And, I just by deduction managed to realize he was using the Gmail app on his iPhone, not the Mail app, because in Apple's ecosystem that would automatically open up to Numbers. But I was like, well, I think you're going to have to tie it to the Mail app, which sounds like a pain. I finally figured out that he could copy on my phone. Figured out that he could copy the link to the Numbers app and paste it in Safari, and it would automatically open the Numbers app. But it gives you an idea with the now. Some of that, I think, is on Google's part. Google is often really slow with updating its stuff for iOS. Like, you still can't do split. I mean, unless it's changed, like in the last month or so, you still can't do split screen with Gmail on the iPad. That's ridiculous. It took them forever. Trust me, it was super annoying. After everybody else and their mom had done split screen for their document programs on iOS, Google finally introduced it like a year later. And it's like, this is, especially when I was a freelancer, this is something that everyone used. But my point is, you could still easily open up documents for Google Docs and stuff through iOS and stuff. They're that good of a service company. There was this big hassle when I was trying to open up something for Apple's. That's what I mean by including other people in there. See, here's my Android using EIC. If it had just opened up very neatly or something on the web or something like that, it would be like, wow, look how convenient Apple is. Aren't they a great company? But no, it had to look like a hassle. That's what I mean by the attractiveness.
So he didn't have Numbers installed on his phone? Is that the issue?
But by trying to click on it from the link from the Gmail app instead of the Mail app, But what did the link in Gmail go, like? It just didn't do anything. It kept saying that he needed to go down. It would open up and say he needed to download it. But the thing is, he already had it downloaded. So that was the way I figured it out, to copy the link from Gmail, paste it into Safari and on the phone, and then it opened. So that's
also a kind of a problem with Apple. Doesn't allow you to change the default email app to Gmail, so it's always linked with Mail.
That's true too,
which is annoying, but that's a whole nother issue.
But that's kind of what I meant, is you have this convenience going on. People from other are going to see, wow, they have their stuff together. Instead, it ended up looking like it was a pain in the butt. So
so on Twitter, we had a poll asking what improvements you want most from on iCloud. and an overwhelming 61% of people wanted more files, free file storage.
Well, yeah, that goes without saying. I think. I mean, 5 gigs is just pathetic.
Yeah. So 16% wanted Mac backup support, 18% wanted iMessage in the cloud, and 5% wanted an Android app.
5%.
So that's the 5%. And some interesting comments from Lazardude on Twitter. Thought that iCloud storage space should be based on the number of Apple products that people
I agree
have.
with that. 5 gigs per device would be all right.
And that's kind of what I meant. If you have a Mac, here's you a lot of space.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And a lot of people had a similar thoughts on that, that's how it should be. So people wanted more control over the storage. A lot of people thought that iCloud should be similar to. Does Google allow free storage of photos? I forget if it does or not.
Only
yeah,
if
they
you
do.
only if you let it compress though.
Oh right.
Yeah,
right.
they're optimized for the device. Pixel users get free original quality photos, but honestly, the optimized version is it's not they're not horrible.
Yeah, it's
but
pretty good.
But it's not the original. It's not the original size.
So you can save JPEGs, but
if-
you can't save like raw files.
Yeah, or even JPEGs are compressed.
Okay.
But they're still decent.
This is an
And if
extreme
you-
version. It's like Facebook where it compresses them, but it's not that
Right.
bad.
It's not even close.
Because I know Amazon allows you to save photos, and it doesn't count to your against your allocation.
Only if you're on Prime though, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything's prime.
You have to use.
And if you pay for Google Drive, you can upload however, if you have enough space. If you pay for 2 terabytes, you can upload original photos, no problem.
But you were talking earlier about that you mainly have your iCloud, so for backup and stuff. I barely see how you can own an Apple product without having some.
Well, you have to.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so because I have that for my backups and everything else, but I also have a Drive account for large video files and stuff. And we were talking about this before the sound disappeared. That's it's just really easy to drag and drop and share. Most importantly, that stuff with people.
Yep.
Yeah. The sharing is important. I think that's another thing. Yeah.
How long do you guys know how long it's been at 5 gigs? Because I think it's one thing when phones, came in like,
Right.
8, 16, and 32 gig versions, and that was it. But now it's like so much more than that you can't even back up your phone anymore.
Right.
I want to say iCloud launched in 2011. Is that right?
Sounds right.
Well, yeah, it was Mobile Me, and then before that it was iDisk.
Mobile Me was also 5 gigs. I don't remember. I know .Mac was 10 because you paid for that. That was $100 a year. Mobile
Right.
Me, which was the worst name. If if we're ranking names, it goes .Mac, iTools, Mobile Me, iCloud, and then Mobile Me. That's my hierarchy. I probably have a .Mac email address, and if Apple ever takes it away from me, I'm driving to Cupertino and pounding on their door.
But do you use that? Because my sister actually has a Mac, like an @mac.com email address, and I'm wondering if she's like locked in now for life.
That's my personal email. I've had it forever, since I had it since back with iTools or whatever. Right? iTools, yeah, that's what it was called. So I've had it for quite some time. But that's my personal one. I would probably just go into a depression if Apple ever said we're not going to support .Mac addresses anymore and force me to go to iCloud.
That'd be crazy.
So perhaps we'll see some iCloud improvements at WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference.
I don't think so, but we'll see.
And first week of June is WWDC. So, and we'll
we got 2 weeks from yesterday.
2 weeks from 3 weeks from
3
Monday.
weeks, okay.
So 2 weeks from this Monday. So maybe we'll see some iCloud improvements, not just storage, but in general services.
And we'll have some cool stuff to talk about again.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we'll probably also see some iOS 12 features being revealed at WWDC.
Yeah, well, that one I bet the farm on. You're
Yeah.
going to get something with iOS.
So we're going to get something with that. And since WWDC is around.
running this transition.
WWDC. I should just say WWDC. WWDC always
dubs.
ties my tongue up. So the developers conference is right around the corner. We thought we'd talk about features we'd like to see in iOS 12, and if viewers, listeners have any thoughts on what they want to see from iOS 12, let us know. We'll talk about them. So we posted an article a couple weeks ago about some of the features we'd like to see. One of the features that I personally would like to see, and actually it was actually kind of previewed, it was supposed to come out in iOS 11.3, is iMessages in the cloud, because organizing messages across multiple devices is just getting a little, it's driving me crazy. It's just, I deleted one device. I want it to be deleted across all devices and and just managing it several times over several devices is just driving me crazy. And I know it was supposed to come out for iOS 11.3. I have a feeling it's going to end up being an iOS 12 feature. So if it doesn't come out before in the next couple of weeks. So I mean that's the big feature I would like to see. So Leif, do you have any thoughts on
Well,
what would you like to see?
I think I've already mentioned it. I can't remember which part of the podcast it was, the silent time or the new one. But, especially with a bigger screen phone, especially when I'm working on the train or something like, a lot of what I do is, I want to look at one web article that I'm looking at and I want to write notes on it. Especially with a larger iPhone, it would really be nice to have like a split screen feature for, they do it for the iPad and stuff. And I know they're thinking, oh, it's a lot. But, if you do an adjustable screen up here and have a very small area to look up here in the middle, you have the area that you're writing or taking notes on, it'd work very nice. You wouldn't have to do it for a smaller one, just like they initially kept some features only to the bigger iPads and iPad Pros, but I think that would be nice. This is a simple thing. When somebody was calling today, and I don't know if I really want this because it is convenient to open your phone when a call comes. But someone was calling me and I was trying to type out something, and of course the whole screen gets taken over by the call coming on, and I almost hit the accept call, and I really didn't want to just because I was typing in that same spot, and I was like and so. Sometimes I wish I would see like some kind of banner up here or something as opposed to
there's a few Android phones that most of them really that it just comes in with a little thing across the top that you can press accept or reject, which I agree was much better. Yeah.
Well, then the other thing is that the other way that Apple does it is nice too for convenience, just picking up your phone and answering a call. But I'd like for it to be an option, like at the top, and that's a lot of these things where I'd like a different way of doing it if I prefer that way. But I know that adds complexity, and Apple likes to go for that simplicity. So there's that.
Yeah. The split screen is a big thing on Android as well. A lot of it's baked into the I think since Nougat even. It's been a couple of years now. I was excited when I switched over to get it, and I gotta tell you, on my phones I don't really use it that often.
The train is the only time like I would use it. I mean, I have a very specific use case, and it's funny. I've noticed with a lot of stuff that we talk about in Apple, there's so many different ways to interact with these devices, especially when you're like a foot-bound commuter as opposed to someone who, drives in a car and stuff. There are so many ways that I use these devices that someone who has a car and doesn't carry around backpacks and stuff would never even think of. So
yeah, we have a couple comments. One is. Himon says they would really wish that they could ignore and carry on, so they're agreeing with the phone call. And then Crazy is saying put the page shuffle at the bottom of the screen.
Page shuffle.
Yeah. What is it?
Page shuffle?
Page shuffle? What is that?
I wonder if that's like when you have all the tabs open?
I mean...
is
it's
that
looking
Safari?
like it's at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, that thing.
If you can clarify, that would help us out. I think we know what you're talking about, but
instead of scrolling all the way through the top, maybe you just want it like a bottom tab.
I see.
Yeah. So you could swipe it with your thumb. That's the best way I could see.
Like to bounce to the top of the page. You mean like that thing? Maybe.
We'll have to see. Maybe they'll respond back.
There are definitely a lot of UI refinements that need to be made.
Yes.
That that there are a lot of I mean, it's always been true of the Mac, and it's true of the iPhone, that there are a lot of inconsistencies in UI. And it would be nice if those inconsistencies would be corrected. But there are also some things that you go, what? Who thought of using it this way? Because it doesn't. It's kind of a counterintuitive way of using it. So I hope some of those things get fixed. Like Jason Cross, our staff writer, brought up the whole camera settings in the camera app in his article.
Yeah.
And as the unofficial documentarian for my family, if it would be so much more easier if I can get faster access to those camera settings. The best solution is probably just to use a different camera app for me.
Right.
But if I'm on the lock screen and I want to access the camera, it's the default Apple camera app, and getting to those settings is not very, very intuitive. It's not very easy to get to. So
Agreed.
if there was just a quick way to change some of those settings, I don't need to record in 4K all the time, as much as I would like to. I don't need to. Things like that. So.
And Crazy clarified and says, like going from Safari to Siri, if that helps.
Oh, is that in the app switcher?
Yeah, but that is at the bottom of the screen. It's either the button or the gesture in the iPhone 10.
Right.
And like Siri is.
I don't have my phone with me, so yeah.
Siri on the iPhone 10, you got to hold the power button. Is that right? Maybe that's what you're talking about.
Well, in the iPhone 10, you swipe. Is it swipe? Let's see. I do it so naturally, I forget what the actual motion is.
I got you.
Is it swipe up and hold, and then the app switcher comes up?
Yeah, right. That's the switch between apps. But to get to Siri, I think you got to either do Hey Siri or you hold the power button, right?
Yeah. So.
Because. All right.
And
I tell you these things.
Bobu says, I want my battery status back.
Yeah, I would like the percentage back.
Better battery all around.
I don't need an icon. If you just put a simple percentage there, it's amazing how, when that went away, I thought, all right, it's no big deal. And then I realized it was a big deal. Because depending on your, maybe for a majority of people, it's fine. But there are some of us who use their phones a lot, and battery life is something you got to keep track of. And having a numerical indicator goes a long way into preserving your battery life. So, and also, Jason also brought up a real dark mode. Speaking of battery life, a real dark mode, that's mostly for iPhone 10 users, because the iPhone 10 has an OLED, and when the screen is black, you're actually saving a little bit of battery life. So, like, if people see my phone, my actual lock screen is just a black screen. There's nothing on it, and that's because it's to help save battery life. It's boring. It doesn't add much personality, but it's it's a way to save battery life.
Makes sense.
So. Mike, were there any features that you were hoping to bring up in particular?
Well, yeah. I mean, you got like a week. But I've been, I wrote about this last week, that my biggest thing is on iOS is notifications. They're horrible. I hate them. I hate the notification center. I hate the whole thing about them. And I wish that they would just redo that whole system, because
for the
they're
purposes of the
unintuitive.
podcast,
They're annoying. They're just not something that the only time I ever go into the notification center is just to delete everything, because if I miss them, I never go see them. Whereas on Android, there's something that I interact with all day long, because there's music controls there. There's, notifications are based on priority, not just chronological. They're grouped, so I don't have like 1,600 Twitter notifications. Like it's just there's so much about it that Apple hasn't really given any thought. That would be the killer feature for me, if they just said, we're just revamping the entire thing, and here's our new kind of our new approach to notifications.
Yeah.
And also another feature I'd like to see that I'm probably not going to get is to get rid of that damn icon grid. I hate it. I hate forcing me to have every single app that I ever downloaded on my home screen. So I hate it. But it doesn't sound like we're going to be getting that this time based on rumors. So we'll see.
Well, the icon grid's kind of an interesting conundrum for Apple because it's become, for lack of a better word, iconic for Apple. You know, that's people associate that view with the iPhone, and to dramatically change it kind of is, you know, goes to changing its branding as well.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, but it's not like you would take. It's like the Mac desktop. You know, you have the option if you want to keep icons on the desktop, go ahead. If you don't, it'll just be a button you press and it comes up, and there they are.
Like the launcher.
Like I don't. Yeah. Like I mean, again, like what Android does. I just don't like. Give me the option. You could have it on by default. You don't have to mess up your branding if you don't want to. But give me the option to have them all in a launcher or a drawer or whatever you want to call it. And so I can keep my home screen clean if I want.
And that's kind of what I meant with the launcher. Yeah, you wouldn't even really be ruining your branding because they already have it. Yeah. On Mac.
So ship it the classic way by default. But if people want to, they can.
Well,
I don't know.
The thing with the Mac branding, I think the thing is, for the Mac, the branding is this. And for people who are listening, I'm pointing to the back of my laptop with the Apple logo. This is the branding, not necessarily the screen. And for the iPhone, it's been the screen because the back always changes, you know, and it's different from model to model, and it's different colors. It's some it's aluminum or steel or whatever they're using. Some it's glass. So the back changes, but the one consistent part is that home screen. So yeah, it's, you know, I totally get what you're saying. You know, it's, but I can see how it could be something of a sticky point within Apple to change.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
So
I guess.
It's, you know, it's Apple.
All right. Yeah. I mean, at least changing on the iPad, because the iPad's more of a desktop.
Right. It's more of
bigger screen. You have a bigger dock, all that stuff.
I like the.
If you want to keep it on the iPhone, then keep it, but make the iPad UI, because it's different anyway. They already treat the iPad differently with that slide over stuff and the multitasking and all that other stuff. So put it there. I can deal with it on my phone. On the iPad, it's just horrible. I have the 13-inch or whatever, 12.9. And it's like these icons, there's like so much space between them because they have to keep it, you know, the same UI across the 9.7 and the 12. So like it's just terrible. I don't know. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I say get rid of it. And also obviously, you know, Siri, fix it.
Yeah, you know, Siri kind of
do something with Siri, you know. I mean,
something of a pun. Siri kind of goes without saying.
Yes, and that would. I mean, everybody is hoping for that at that point. If you know, we're all talking about Apple stock. If Apple, you know, if Apple announces some amazing Siri improvements, it's going to be the first $1 trillion company. So
yeah, well, it might reach that before then anyway.
Yes, that's true.
they're pretty close. I didn't check today, but. They were hovering around like 920, 930 recently. So they're getting there. They're a few dollars away.
And here's an interesting one on Twitter, is putting an indicator for bandwidth speed because bars and signal strength doesn't equal the actual speed.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great idea because
I could see that.
Yeah. As someone who often like works remotely and sometimes, you know, when I'm sick of working at home, I'll go to like a coffee shop or something just to break it up. And you know, you freelance, you know what that's all about, that kind of thing. Signal strength is something, you know, it's kind of like the battery thing. You kind of are looking at your signal strength and, you know, I need more information than just, I got 2 bars or 3 bars or whatever. Yeah. So it's more a broadband bandwidth indicator would be really cool, and I don't know how that would be executed, but that would be so helpful. So
One of the things that often surprises people about San Francisco is that the cellular internet here can be really sketchy sometimes, and it's the hills. But there have been times when it looks like I have plenty of bars, plenty, the LTE showing up, and it's not doing anything. So that would be a case where that would really come in handy, and especially when you live up in the hills like I do. So.
Yeah, living in San Francisco, the thing that happens to me a lot is I'll see an LTE indicator, and then it'll switch to 4G.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, like my bandwidth has gone to a screeching halt. It's just like, it's suddenly everything is like 4 times slower than it was before.
My favorite is when it just says 1x.
Yeah.
You have no idea, like what is that?
So, and I know San Francisco's a unique landscape, and but as Leif pointed out, you can literally go in San Francisco like one end of the block to another end of the block, and you'll have 1 bar on one block on one end and 4 bars on the other end because of the hills and stuff like that. So it's pretty crazy, but a bandwidth indicator would be like very, very helpful. So
and I guess we especially I bring up San Francisco with this stuff and a lot. I think one of the reasons I bring that up, it was like, we're right here. This is Apple's backyard, and you would think these problems, they would see it and be able to apply it to their own products and stuff. So there's that.
I mean, a bandwidth indicator wouldn't necessarily solve that problem. It would just give you more information.
But it would give us more information to make decisions on what we're doing.
Right.
And make it a more useful device.
Kind of like, same with the battery indicator. A numerical battery indicator that's always there doesn't necessarily solve my battery problem.
The battery indicator, most certainly. I mean, I would be shocked if they added a bandwidth indicator. If for no other reason, then it would the carriers would have to agree to it, which they wouldn't, because it would show.
That's true.
The actual speeds of their networks, and people would say, wait a minute, what the hell am I paying for?
So there's a comment on YouTube, and I wonder how you guys feel about like certain redundant buttons and moves. So like the camera icon exists on the lock screen, but you can still swipe left to get to it as well. So like, why have both?
I think the swipe is, Apple goes for intuitiveness, but it's kind of advanced user stuff. You either find it out by accident or it's something that you looked up. I think for like, sorry, Dad, like my dad, it'd be nice for him to have the camera the icon there, because otherwise, unless he calls up his son and asks about it like he always does, he's not going to figure that out probably. So, I mean, it's nice that you have the little visual indicators that you can do that.
Yeah, it's the same thing when they had that little bar to show that the control center had moved. Like a lot of Apple's users are not heavy tech people, and it just kind of gives them like visual aids. I mean, I do agree there is a lot of redundancy and a lot of kind of things like you just figure out. But Apple sells 50 million iPhones a quarter. I'd say at least 60% of those are to people who, don't necessarily have all the answers when it comes to this stuff. And they just need something that they pick up, they can use, and they can put it back down.
And that's the best thing about Apple. I know, it's like, family member, like there was one, where they had a Windows PC and stuff, like a Surface tablet and stuff, and constantly kept downloading viruses on the thing and stuff. And, I had all these technical questions, and and we wised up and got them an iPad, and whoa, it can't do all that stuff, or at least definitely not as easily. And so 3 years on, nothing has happened to that device. So, people may laugh at, but it's a really noble, ideal to strive for too. Is this, it is, you might think it looks stupid or something like that, but there's a lot of people that's really helpful for. So
yeah. And but however, that speaks to the. As Roman was saying before, there's a lot of UI issues that crept into iOS 12, 11. What are we on, 11?
11.
Yeah. That crept into iOS 11 that really need to be kind of smoothed out and fixed. Even like just little things, like little visual things that Apple just never had in the past. And, we'll see what iOS 12 brings, but I think they need to go through every single part of that operating system and just, make sure it matches the prior screen. Like there's things like, fonts match, but like bolding doesn't match, or like spacing doesn't match, or this is too close to the back button and on this screen it's not. Like little things like that just kind of upset the visual experience and the whole kind of UI as you're going through it.
It'd be interesting if iOS didn't exist prior to now and they had to recreate a new one, what it would be like. Because, you know, like, they defined all these moves that, and everyone who's like, you know, been on the iPhone is like, okay, this is how you do it. And true, they you know, changed some things with the 10, but it's like if they were really to start from scratch, how different, you know, would it be?
With or without Steve Jobs is the question.
Yes, I was thinking WWSD. What would Steve do? Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, if they had to design a new, well, although Apple Watch is well, no, actually it wasn't. Now it is. The first iteration of Apple Watch was awful. They had a freaking button devoted to contacts, for Christ's sakes. Who needs that?
And in that recent article, you remember it was saying that Johnny Ive said that was the first product that we did without Steve. And
it was.
No,
yeah, like, I'm actually. That was interesting that he confirmed that. I always suspected that because the first, that first Apple Watch, while good and really pretty, the OS was a mess.
Yes.
Like, and they, you know, credit to Apple and their engineers and their developers. They fixed it quick. It was even before Apple Watch 2 came out. Watch OS 2 really changed things like dramatically. The way like those glances worked, what the buttons did, and all that, because they realized that it just wasn't conducive to being used well.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve Jobs was, you know, he left a lot of legacies on this planet, but one of the more overlooked one is the UI of a touchscreen phone is just brilliant. That ain't easy, man. To come up with that from basic scratch, because it looked nothing and it acted nothing like it did on the Palm and the Trellos before it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just, you know, straight up brilliant, that UI. And 10 years later, you know, that's why we still have the same one, because I don't know if there is a better one.
And I hate to admit it, they need to keep that mindset in place, because I know, we saw what happened last time Apple tried to move on from Steve Jobs. It wasn't a good idea. And maybe not without the rudeness and the brashness, but they need to have that just commitment. Let's make this simple. It just works. And
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but at the same token, if you try to recreate that, you're not going to be able to.
You're not, but I mean,
Steve reportedly told Tim Cook before he died, just don't try to do what I would do. And that's probably the best piece of advice you can give someone, because you're not going to be able to do it. It's just going to look like a cheap imitation. And, you know, it's an impossible. I mean, Tim Cook has the most impossible job in the planet. He has to keep a nearly $1 trillion company running. Plus, he has to live up to this ridiculous legacy of the guy who came before him. And, you know, he's doing the best he can. So, I mean, you know, listen, I sound like I'm a fanboy, and I'm absolutely not. I criticize Apple plenty. But the job that Tim Cook has done in post Steve Jobs is commendable.
Yes, especially considering his position and where he came from. That's remarkable. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know, the watch, if that is a true, you know, post Steve Jobs product, and I believe it was, the design is spot on. And the OS, you know, while they didn't get it right the first time, WatchOS 4 is awesome. That Siri faces, you know, that's something that Steve would have done. I mean, he's learning on the job. Tim Cook. Tim Cook wasn't a genius inventor. He was an operations guy. So he's learning on the job. And you know, I think you know, HomePod, you know, we could talk about that, sure. But you know, Steve Jobs did the iPod Hi-Fi. So listen, we all have our missteps.
It's true.
Well, Steve Jobs has a large legacy, and one of the other...
This was a softball, Roman. Come on, give it to me.
Among the other things that Steve Jobs came with during his tenure at Apple was the reinvention of retail and the Apple Store. So on May 15th, 11 years ago, so yesterday, 11 years ago in a day, Steve Jobs presented a preview to the media of the new Apple Store. This was a totally revamped store from what Apple had done in the past, and it's pretty much stayed the same since then. From what we know, as we know, the Apple Store is now. So the Apple Store in its current iteration, I mean, it's undergone some tweaks and stuff. It's now, you know, the Apple Town Square. But the Apple Store as we know it now is pretty much what was implemented back in 2001 and it officially opened on May 19th of 2001 of that year. So, the Apple Store is kind of this unique part of Apple. It's not. It's sort of this odd thing because it's the retail sector. It's a place, it's a place where Apple sells its products, but part of the whole when Apple opened the Apple Store back in 2001 was it wanted to put a heavy emphasis on it being more of a, I guess, gathering place than less of a store.
Yes.
Yeah, the one thing that about the Apple Store has always struck me, like you'll never have a salesperson come up to you and say, whoa, did you see this or anything like that. They'll ask you once, can I help you? If you say no, that's it. You're on your own.
Yeah.
And see, they were trying to change that with those luxury boutiques for the Apple Watch. It was a different experience, removed one, but
I never went to one, but it definitely seemed different.
But it's like I said in that article, I'm glad that failed because I believe that was a.
But those weren't Apple stores; those were Apple franchises.
Even though they were still trying to, shake up that because look at there, it's all the hoi polloi and stuff, and now we're gonna suck up to you and everything, and I didn't like that. And that's another. It speaks to another iteration that Apple had. I mean, they had a $20,000 Apple Watch, and they said, okay, that ain't gonna work. So they did it, and then they made it more of a $300, $400 device rather than a $20,000 device. So
I have a question.
Yep.
So
you can go.
Since for how long it's been around, are you guys surprised that they still exist and that they're still doing well?
No,
I'm not surprised
either. Yeah,
I'm not surprised either because what I am surprised about is I'm surprised at the number of Apple stores that exist now.
Yes,
is there over 500?
That's a lot.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure of the number, but there's a lot of them.
There's a lot, and I never thought it would get to that number.
Yeah,
so
I didn't either.
And mostly not because Apple's products aren't popular, but because I thought that the shift towards online shopping would be so immense that it would, it would stifle a technology retailer from opening more stores. That's what I thought. But the thing is about the Apple Store, you have to. That's where you go to get service on your Apple products. And I know a lot of people who, like, if they go to the mall or something, they drop their kids off at the Apple Store, and because Apple lets you use their products without any real time limit. You can sit there and play on an iPad for like an hour, and they won't say.
They used
anything.
to have like little sections like specifically for kids.
Yeah,
with like color. I mean, maybe they still do. I haven't been in an Apple Store in a while, or at least not a big one.
That video of Steve Jobs showing around it is one of the things they highlight. Is look at the kids. Yeah.
I guess one of the big things, though, obviously, is that like the prices don't change whether you're online or in the store, right? Like that's what killed.
That's a good point.
All these other ones is that like, you can just go on Amazon and buy it cheaper.
Yeah.
But you don't have that option.
Yeah. I mean, Apple has its sales and here and there, but you're right. For the most part, the phone costs what the phone costs, no matter where you buy it.
Right. There's the only advantage to going to the Apple Store is talking to a person if you need additional help, and not having to sit there and wait for it to be delivered.
And trying it out.
The product. Yeah, you get to try it out too.
Yep.
Give you an idea of the experience. I went to a Best Buy right after the HomePod released because Jason had ours, and man, I'm not even kidding. They had 2 armed guards near the table to that, and I felt. But you go to the Apple Store, and it's like, yay, democracy, yay, let's all go.
So that's at Best Buy you might get some guy who's trying to sell you something you don't need or doesn't really know what he's talking about. No offense to people who work at Best Buy, but Apple people are they know what they're talking about, and they also I said it before, I'll say it again. There's no pressure.
Yes.
You're buying a $1,000 or $2,000 product, which is no matter how you slice it, that's luxury territory. But you never feel like you're being pressed to purchase.
Yes.
If you don't want it, you can walk away, and you don't feel like, oh man, I should have bought that.
That's important.
Yeah.
And last month we bought my mom a new iPhone, and she was switching from Android actually. And there's 2 Apple stores within a block of each other in Glendale,
Wow.
and they're both
Yeah.
full.
That's the other thing is that always surprises me is that Apple stores are, no matter all the ones that I've seen, I've only seen one empty, and it was because I was in the mall before it opened. So I walked by the Apple store as it opened, and maybe walked by it again a half hour later, and it was somewhat empty, but it was also dressed right at open.
But it's always somewhat bustling. It's funny. There's the mall near my house has a Microsoft store like 2 stores away,
So sad.
and like it's always empty. Like there's employees and nobody. And I'm not saying that because I hate on Microsoft. Like I don't care, but like I always notice like because it's a nice looking store. But you know, people attract people, and Apple just always like you see all these people. Oh, let me see what's in there. That's that's what Apple is selling. It's selling visibility by having these stores there. And yeah, of course they sell their products, but you know, people who might not have an Apple product or might not even really know what an iPhone's all about, they see, you know, a mobbed store and you're drawn to that.
And importantly, when you actually talk to a salesperson in an Apple store, you know, it was kind of going back to what we were saying. It almost feels like you're talking to friends that happen to be in the same place, like potential friends. And it's like, whoa, look at this cool thing. I mean, and they didn't say that. It's like me telling it to them. And that's an important distinction too. And
sometimes I think when I have a like a service with those the Genius people, I feel like they like, all right, this kid, what does he look like? Let's send this technician to talk to him. Like they try to match up personalities.
Right, exactly. So, and that's the way I feel. I have to really give them credit for that. It's almost like I feel like hanging out with the people who try to sell me stuff at Apple.
And no, that's clearly that it's by design. Like they do that. You know, it's crazy to think that when the Apple Store launched, or whatever you want to call it, opened, there was no iPod, for Christ's sakes. I remember I went to the opening of one in Jersey on, I don't know what day it was, but it was sometime around 2001, like October or something, or November of 2001. And I was online. The iPod hadn't released yet, and the employees were like showing it off, like it was coming out like a week later. And you know, it was this big giant store just with Macs. Like that's it, Macs and software. And everyone said Steve Jobs was nuts, and you know, rightfully so. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're barely the company wasn't worth anything. And Steve Jobs was like, no, we're opening stores around the country, and we're going to sell our brand and our image. And you know, it was a hell of a gamble, and you know, just another part of his legacy that Tim Cook has to live up to now. But it was at yep, carry on.
No, you. I was just going to say, along with that, you know, lately with their big flagships and stuff, they always put them in very public places, public squares. Got here Union Square, got Pioneer Square in Chicago. You know, got the famous Glass Cube in New York, and you know, it's you know they. I'm actually, as a former Chicagoan, kind of annoyed that they put that store in Pioneer Square because that was a public space, a big one, and like that's just a store now. And but anyway, it is an important focal point of the city, and so they've turned a place where people used to gather into a place where people gather and look at their stuff. I mean, so they kind of bring it into that whole community thing, and that's, you know, they basically make you associate it with your own community. Yeah.
I mean, and again, that's by design. Each store has a character that's unique to whatever that place is, whether it's inside a mall or whether it's in, like, as you say, Pioneer Square in Chicago. Like it's they spend a lot of time designing these stores to fit both the landscape and the people that they're attracting.
Yes.
Yeah. The one thing about the Apple Store that I'll never get used to is that you can do self-checkout, and that's not a big deal because you can do self-checkout at other stores, even at the supermarket. But self-checkout at the stores means you go up to a register and a scanner, and you scan your things like that, and then you leave. You have to go through an exit process. The self-checkout at the Apple Store is you take out your phone, you go into the Apple Store app, and you can, as you're walking out the store, complete your purchase.
Yeah, no,
and then
crazy.
That's it. And it's like the weirdest thing because it's on my device. I don't have to go to a station. You know, I could literally be pacing myself to be out the store as soon as the purchase is done. And I'm walking out with something, and you know, I'm I keep thinking that a security guard is gonna like grab me from behind and say, "You didn't pay for that, buddy." But it hasn't happened like in the 5 or 6 times I've done it, and it's the weirdest. It's the weirdest.
Wait, so they
phenomenon for me.
hand you the device first before you pay for it?
I think you just pick it off the shelf.
You can just take it off the
shelf. Yeah, you can
If
just
there's
grab
stuff
it with
on the
a case or
shelf,
something. Yeah.
yeah, the bigger devices you have to you'll
Okay.
get help by a customer service rep. But like like I've gone in to buy a cable or an adapter or something, and you can just take out your app, your phone, and use the Apple Store app and ring yourself out, and it's like the weirdest thing to me still.
Yeah.
No one's gonna stop the Filipino Wolverine.
That's true. That's true. So no one will stop the Filipino Wolverine. So, but yeah. So
They also they make $1 billion a second, so they can afford to
Yes.
lose $20 in the case.
I was thinking about saying that. I
Right.
thought it was a little too much.
they're more concerned about the guy walking out with the laptop
Right,
than
right.
the guy walking out with the
iPad.
with the lightning adapter. So,
Right. iMac Pro. That's
Yeah.
what I meant to say.
so it's- yeah, but yeah, and one thing. So there's a Apple Insider did an article yesterday because yesterday was the anniversary of the preview. So the actual opening is on the 19th, which I think is Saturday. Yeah, and one of the things that's always been said about the Apple Store, and the Apple Insider article even says this, is that Apple changed the face of retail. And I kind of have to disagree with that a little bit. So, I mean, the only stores that you see like Apple stores are basically other tech stores like the Microsoft store.
Yep.
Self-checkout is a different thing. That was something that was going to happen eventually. So Apple wasn't a pioneer in that.
And yeah, it's
So-
really only like Microsoft is similar. Like there's not a ton of those tech companies that have
Right.
big giant retail presences like that.
Yeah.
Remember when Ron Johnson tried that with JCPenney? That was a
Right.
spectacular disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really it's suited for Apple because
Right.
they, their products, people want to touch them, want to hold them, want to see them, even if they're not buying them. Like I've gone to how many Apple stores just to see whatever the latest thing is. I have no intention of buying it. I just want to look at it.
Right.
So I'm not sure they changed the face of retail either.
Yeah, that's
a bold
exactly
statement.
my point. Is that Apple's model works well for them.
For them, yeah.
I don't know if it doesn't work well for Microsoft because Microsoft doesn't sell a lot of its own
Yeah,
hardware. So Apple sells a lot of its own hardware.
Well, although those stores are big, man, they have Xboxes and Surfaces. Like
that's
they
true,
do
they sell
stuff.
Xboxes, Surfaces.
They just
yeah.
don't have the like. I even thought like they always have the Xbox right in the front, and you can play it, but there's no one ever there. It's
See,
weird.
that's the thing I only see people doing is doing Just Dance, and that's all that the Microsoft Store ever has.
Maybe that's the problem. So. But yeah, so the 19th is the anniversary. Stop by your Apple store. Maybe they'll have something special going on. We don't know. I don't know if they will. They Apple isn't big into anniversaries and stuff. So, I mean, there's some landmark anniversaries. I don't think Apple would consider one of them. But I do say if you are planning to go to an Apple store on the 19th, go at opening, because when you go at opening and they open the doors, the Apple Store employees will actually applaud as you enter the store.
They do that every friggin' day.
Yeah, they do that every day. I
outta here.
went to an Apple Store before
I
work
thought that was
once.
just for the grand opening.
Yeah, no, it's every day. I went there.
Oh my god, I'd hate to work there.
I went to the Apple Store in Union Square once to get a cable. And I did the self-checkout and felt like I was stealing something. And as the doors, it was just an ordinary day. There was nothing special. And they all stood there and applauded as we entered the store.
So if we did that for you at work, Roman, would you be like, when you walked in?
I think after a
that
while,
like-
I'd be like, all right. That's yeah. So, but every once in a while, that would make me feel good. So, but yeah, if you're ever feeling down, go to an Apple store in the morning.
Wake up at 7:30 and go to the Apple Store and cheer
so,
up.
Let's spend $30 on a cable.
Yeah, then spend $30 on a cable that probably costs $2 to make. So,
For all our listeners, live viewers, tweet at Roman the hand clapping emoji because it'll really make his day, apparently.
it's at Pinatubo 2000.
Yeah.
So I will appreciate any applauding GIFs or icons every morning, that'll make my day.
I'm not doing that, Room.
Well, on that note, that wraps up the Macworld Podcast episode 605. So I'd like to thank Mike Simon on the East Coast. Hope you don't run into any thunderstorms or tornadoes.
We had a tornado watch. I was freaking out, but Leif's Midwest wisdom talked me down.
I'd like to thank the wise Midwestern wisdom. I don't know what I'm saying. Leif Johnson. Thank you, Leif.
Thank you.
Thanks to our producer, Dan Masuoka. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, and thanks for people who stood by our technicalities this morning.
Yes.
Definitely. Yes.
Thanks to you guys out there watching us. Thank you for standing by us as we tried to figure out what was going on. So we're sorry for that. Hopefully next week, things will go a little bit smoother. Stuff happens. So, but join us next week. Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific. We'll post the topics probably like the day before, and hope you can join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.